here today for my 8th annual senior walk along the Beltline, and this time we did it in rare form, large and in charge. We're at Westside Park. We're basically taking these seniors on a walk of a brand new park that's along the Beltline, consistent with my theme that seniors that's been here for years in the city of Atlanta should be able to enjoy these beautiful things that the Beltline has brought, like this Westside Park. They and I just went out and we're walking all over, enjoying nature, and it's a great time with these seniors. Today, I had to do all kinds of TV interviews, I had to do meetings, and so I had to wear a suit, but I would not miss my annual senior walk even if I have to be out here walking in my suit. This is too important. Get out here and walk with my friends, my loved ones. When we got started today, they didn't know where they were going. I asked them, had any of them been here before, and only one had. So this is a great way for them to see the city, and this is the first time. So they didn't know how long the walk was, what we were gonna see along the walk. So I was happy to hear them go, ooh, and ah, and this is so nice. And they started taking out their own phones and taking pictures. We went up a hill, and we made it up that hill and on up some steps, and then they got to see the overlook, and that was the delight. The pride and joy of this thing is to be able to overlook the water, overlook the city, and they enjoyed that quite a bit. This is an exciting time on my 8th annual senior walk, and these guys are having fun.
Today is a great day in Southwest Atlanta. This is the 16th annual Harris Community Works Morgan family with Councilmember Andrea Boone and the City of Atlanta Thanksgiving Holiday Celebration Give Back.
We've been blessed and fortunate enough, man, to have partnerships with the City of Atlanta for, I believe, 3 mayors now, and Councilman Boone, Councilman C.T. Martin have all kind of wrapped their arms around us in unity, and they've allowed us to expand our vision of giving.
We had greens, we had turkeys, we had hams, pure leaf tea, and to top it off, sweet potato pie with fresh collard greens. We want to thank Reverend Gregory Sutton and Gail Sutton because Jackson Memorial always opens their door to this community.
I literally grew up on the back street right over there, you know what I mean, 23 years of my life. I'm from Attleville, I'm from the west side, so to give back right here in the neighborhood is a beautiful thing.
If everyone does a little, nobody has to do a lot. Atlanta's our home. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. The Cascade Road Complete Street Project represents years of commitment and a passionate collective push from many who saw a vision for its future, one that would benefit all.
Today we're here in beautiful Southwest Atlanta celebrating $20.9 million worth of improvements right here on Cascade Road. We'll have new streetscapes, benches, we'll have resurfacing, and Southwest Atlanta is the home to many, many of Atlantans. Home of Henry Aaron and Billy Aaron, Judge Clarence Cooper, the home of Evelyn Lowry, Joseph Lowry, Andrew Young, and so many more notable Atlantans. So we are so very happy to be right here to celebrate this groundbreaking.
This ceremony is especially meaningful to me because this is home for me. Cascade is where I get my groceries. So the first phase of this project, the first $20 million is going to take us from Cascade right here at 285 to Avon, and then the next phase is going to take us to the next Kroger. So we're going to go Kroger to Kroger when this is all done. We can do some price checking in our own neighborhood. We'll be able to do that whether we walk, whether we jog, whether Rebecca Cerner of the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition, whether we're on a bicycle, whether we're on MARTA, or whether we're riding around in a car. We're gonna be able to get up and down Cascade without issue, without bumps, and also without being injured in the process. Safety is the most important part about this, to make sure people can cross from District 10 on the left to District 11 on the right. We want everybody to be able to make it home safely. Cascade Road just deserves it, y'all. And we're gonna get it right here in our community.
This is a wonderful event. After many, many years of delay, the Cascade Complete Street Project is finally beginning phase 1, which will be from 285 to Avon. I'm very excited to be a part of this. I own property off Cascade, so this is a street that everyone uses, and it's so critical to our city to make sure that everyone knows that we care about making safe streets everywhere.
We're out here today on Cascade Road, and this is a very exciting project because it's actually going to be all total about a $35 million refurbishing streetscape project that the community has been waiting for the last 4 years. You know, the neighbors are so excited about this project. You know, as you go down Cascade, once you get closer in, as you're going into the West End area, it's bumpy and lumpy, okay? And the residents have been complaining about that for the last 3 or 4 years. So this is the beginning of a new day in Southwest Atlanta with this this is the first phase of the $20 million streetscape project. It's going to start right after the groundbreaking. So it's going to be starting before the end of 2021. And it's going to be a 3 to 4 year project. So it's really going to look nice. And the people in Southwest Atlanta deserve it. In fact, it's been too long, okay? But now it's here.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Madeline Archibald, 2021 Chair of the City Utilities Committee, and I want to welcome you to a work session regarding the solid waste rate that we are considering. There are two pieces of legislation that is pending in that regard. Ms. Kempson-Wright? Hello? Yes, okay, I wanted to put on the line, and I just received a text. Council members Ide, it just went away, Shepherd, Hillis, Westmoreland, Overstreet, Archibald. Is that the full complement of council members on this, participating in this work session?
Yes, Madam Chair, as of now, that is all the council members that are with us.
Okay, and I want to thank Councilmember Ide for she introduced the legislation and has been very critical in the coordination and planning of this work session. And so I thank her for that. I don't know if she wanted to say anything at the beginning of this meeting.
I don't need to, but thank you for that. And I think the law department is going to, go through the meat of it, and then I'll have my questions at the end.
Wondering if we should read the captions of the pending legislation, just so for the public that is listening, they will be queued up on what exactly we're talking about, or will that be embedded in what the law department will be presenting?
I think we could do the one, whatever suits you, Madam Chair.
All right, well, let's, who's here represents the law department today? Who's going to be walking us through this?
Good morning, Councilmember Archibald. This is Alicia Frazier, Managing Deputy City Attorney.
Good morning to you. Thank you for being here. And I know you heard the exchange between Councilmember Ide and I. Do you think we need to read the caption? Cover that in your presentation.
I would recommend that you read the caption, and then you can turn it over to us, and we will walk through high level of the rate study, as well as the recommendations of the rate study, and then a detailed.
Hi, y'all. I'm sorry. The solid waste work session in council just started, so I'm going to be listening on that.
Okay. Please mute your phone. Okay, so I think we have our rules of engagement. That sounds good. Thank you for that, Attorney Frazier. Santana or Ms. Kempson-Wright, could you read the two captions, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll first start off with the remote meeting statement.
Thank you.
This morning's work session on solid waste is 21008773 and 21008776, hosted by the City Utilities Committee, is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with the official code of Georgia 5014-1. The public may access the meeting by dialing 404-902-5066, conference ID 151945, which was noted on the work session's public notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil@atlantaga.gov, the YouTube channel, Facebook, and Twitter pages via at ATL Council. Additionally, the public was able to submit comments related to this work session via voicemail at 404-330-6043 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. on yesterday. The work session agenda and any supplemental materials received or made available to date on the Atlanta City Council City Utilities Committee presentation page. All persons present on the remote council meeting presentation bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, the speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. The agenda and any supplemental materials received have been distributed to council members beforehand. Thank you in advance for your cooperation, and I will read the captions as they were substituted on Monday, December 7th. 21008773, an ordinance by Councilmember Jennifer N. Ide, is substituted by the Atlanta City Council to amend Chapter 130 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to adjust the taxes, assessment, service fees and charges for solid waste services specified therein, including solid waste collection and recycling charges, charges for street-related sanitary services based on equivalent trip generation charges, charges for general good-related sanitary services based on the property's under roof square footage, to formalize the administrative hearing procedure for the resolution of disputes, to update certain other provisions of Chapter 130 of the Code and for other purposes. Ordinance 21-00876 is an ordinance by Councilmember Jennifer Ann Ide, is substituted by the Atlanta City Council to amend Chapter 130 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to adjust the taxes, assessments, service fees, and charges for solid waste services specified therein, including the establishment of a sanitary assessment for street-related sanitary services and general common good-related sanitary services based on a taxable property value, to formalize the administrative hearing procedure for the resolution of disputes, to update certain other provisions of Chapter 130 of the Code and for other purposes.
All right, thank you very much for reading the two captions. We'll turn it over now to Managing City Attorney. Good morning, everyone. Again, this is Alicia Frazier, and I'd like to introduce this. I apologize. I forgot. Just received a text. We did get one public comment. Let's go ahead and hear that, and then we'll go to the presentation, if that's okay. It's just 2 minutes or so. So, go ahead and play that. One comment, please.
One moment. One moment, everyone.
Greetings, Council members and staff, and special greetings to you, citizens of Atlanta, paying attention to our government in action. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. I have an announcement and a concern. Cable TV Board of Directors meet on the third Wednesday of the month. Hopefully, some of you council members have received notifications of the meeting tonight. I haven't, and neither have a number of advocates. Georgia Sunshine Law is notwithstanding. I'm bothered by Section 10, Paragraph 3B of Ordinance 21-0-0873. Whenever a police officer has probable cause to believe that a vehicle is subject to seizure and impoundment pursuant to this section, the police officer shall provide for the towing of the vehicle to a facility controlled by the city or its agents. When the vehicle is towed, the police officer shall notify the person who is found to be in control of the vehicle at the time of the alleged violation, if there is such a person, of the fact of the seizure and of the vehicle owner's right to request a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing, no matter when it will be held, will never be soon enough for some vehicle drivers who be told the owner has the, quote, right to request, unquote. This potential compensational process needs to be reviewed by ACRB, the Citizen Review Board, and by PAS, Policing Alternatives and Diversions. Once this process has been complete and curated, some future policing crises may be averted.
I'm waiting to hear the public comment germane to our topic today. We did not have one that was on point.
That is our only public comment received, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Frazier, please proceed.
Yes. I'd like to introduce the Department of Law team that will be participating in the work session. We have Sharon Broach, who is our Deputy City Attorney for Operations, Stephanie Grant, who's our Division Chief for Public Works, among other departments, Catherine Kit Jane, who is an attorney on Stephanie's team. We have Philip Gilden, who is a partner at the law firm of Greenberg Trowick, and Vita Quinn, who is the consultant, and she is the Director of Management Services for SCS Engineers. Mrs. Quinn will not be able to join us before 10 o'clock, but we will start the presentation with Philip Gilden, who will take us through both the rate study and the recommendations from the rate study. So, Phil, I'll turn it over to you. And then following Phil will be Stephanie Grant and Kit Jane, who will do a detailed walkthrough of the legislation. Yes. Okay. Phil? Is he unmuted?
Ms. Frazier, in Madam Chair, Phil is on mute. If someone could unmute him, please. I believe the area code begins. I'm sorry.
I've received a text that Phil is not on the line. Can someone verify if he's on the call?
Madam Chair, we're verifying now. Madam Chair, we don't show Mr. Gilden on the presentation conference bridge. I'm not sure if he may have accidentally called into the public line, which would not give him access on this bridge. But we're trying to check with a member of the law department now.
All right, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Phil.
Okay. Good, thank you. Sorry for that delay. So hopefully it will be a lot easier if folks have the rate study in front of them as I go through it, because the way that SCS set up the rate study itself is very self-explanatory. So if you have that, that will be very helpful. And if you have the rate study, I point you to page 3. And page 3 is where it starts with the executive summary. It gives a background for the study, and as the folks on the phone know, the City Council directed and retained SCS to perform a rate study for the department. And this study is the result of that retention by the council. The first thing to know is to take a look at is objectives. And this is what the study was looking to do. And this is a very standard, routine, industry-wide format for a rate study. And it has three parts of it. One, first you determine the revenue sufficiency. By that, SCS took a look at all of the revenues that the department receives from the operations. And then it looks at all the operating expenses. It looks at the capital program requirements on an annual basis. It looks at debt service requirements. While again, under your debt coverage requirements, that you have adequate coverage and you have adequate working capital reserves. So first they figure out, okay, here are your expenses. These are the expenses that you need to establish revenues sufficient to meet these expenses. Second part of the analysis is taking those expenses and revenues that you need and then dividing them among the various service types and determining the reasonable allocation of cost provided among the various customer classes and services. And then once you have a cost of service so that you know what each category of cost and each category of service costs, then you do what's called a rate structure analysis. And that is simply taking those costs, taking the analysis of how it's split over the various different customer classes, and then preparing and proposing a structure, a rate structure, which should, if it's accurately calculated, recover the cost of service and the revenue and meet the revenue sufficiency that the plan analyzed. And that's basically what this study does. And the results of the study are what you see in the two ordinances. They'll be explained more later, but the two ordinances basically take the revenues, the cost of service analysis, and then propose a rate structure. And the changes that you'll see in those ordinances are basically the same for both, except for when we get to the common goods and how to accommodate the allocation of those expenses, which again will be explained later. But I did want to mention that even with respect to the common goods services, they did a revenue sufficiency analysis. They looked at the cost of those services, and they determined what those costs that have to be recovered through one of the two choices that you have in front of you in those two ordinances. So both of them and both versions of the ordinances apply the objectives and the recommendations of this study. And I don't know if I guess let me turn it back over to you for a second to see if you want to go step by step through the plan, or if you want to take questions with respect to any one of the things that we just chatted about.
So you referenced at the beginning, and I just went to the website to see how the public would access the rate study. So I did want to, we do have a few people that are on Facebook or even on Channel 26 that I can't see. It is on the City Council website. You go to Standing Committees, and when you go to City Utilities, you will actually see the work session that we're holding right now. And if you click on that, you'll be able to see a series of handouts, including in that would be the rate study. So I did want to make sure that the public understood what you're talking about. So now ask your question again. You're pausing now to see if we want to do what?
Whether any of the committee members had questions at this point, or would you like me to continue basically walking down the rate study and explaining what she did and what SCS did? I can do that, or I can take questions now if there are any.
Well, I would like the latter. I don't know if any of my colleagues have a. I'm with you, Ms. Archibald. I would like for you to go through the study again. Okay. Anybody else? Any objection? If we'll follow that course. Was that Ms.? Yes, go ahead.
This Councilmember Ide. Can I just ask one quick question on the services that were looked at and the cost to provide services? We've gotten some questions from the public of why certain line items were included there and others well, really why maybe things like sign removal or dead animal removal or right-of-way grass mowing were included. So who came up with is that just existing what has been covered in solid waste, and we just used the existing categories to do the rate study? There wasn't necessarily an analysis of what should or shouldn't be included?
Yes, and you're referring to the services that are set forth on page 4 of the rate study. So for folks looking along, you can take a look at that. And essentially, that is exactly right. The rate study took what your existing categories of costs and expenses were and included those in the study. We did not, and SCS didn't make any substantive proposals change or undo any of those existing. So these are the existing services, and that's what this study was based upon.
Okay, we can move forward. I just wanted to get that answer up front. Thanks.
All right, that was good. All right, sir. Yes, please proceed.
And again, turning now to page 5, you'll see a chart. And on that chart, it identifies the cost to provide the various services that are listed on page 4. And so this is where the dollars amount that was identified by SCS, and this is what they then had to set rates to generate sufficient revenues to meet these expenses and to identify other revenue sources to address these. So this is an important page because this is the underlying cost that then the rate study has to figure out where they're going to get the revenues to pay for these costs. Obviously on page 6, they give you some average bills just to give you some context. And particularly there's a chart now you'll see on page 6 right in the middle. It gives you an average residential bill from the various different ways that the new rates that they're proposing would impact. Let's see. Now, and again, if there's questions about how she identified and SCS identified which buckets the various costs went into, because obviously they separated into solid waste collection, recycling costs, and then special services. Special services are the items that we talked about that are in the 2 new ordinance proposals and different ways of collecting that. But if you look back on page 5 in the chart, the special services are the ones that start near the bottom of the chart, and then you'll see it starts with street sweeping, and then essentially all of the items and services that are provided by the department that follow below street sweeping are all the special services. Recycling obviously is on the line above that, and then everything above those are the regular expenses for the collection of actual collection from residents and customers. Any questions on those items?
Sorry. All right.
Okay. And going forward, in the next numbers of sections of the study, they identified what SCS's revenue plan was. And they looked at a revenue adjustment plan over a 5-year period. And generally, rate studies like to project no more than 5 years because costs can change dramatically. And again, the projections of the 5-year plan doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but it's a projection so that you can at least look at what's the likelihood. And more likely than not, you'll revisit this on an annual basis just to see if the revenue projections are meeting what is planned in the study. And as you run through here, basically the bulk of these pages are showing how they did their calculations, where they came up with the analysis that they did. They give you a reasonably and a good look at and very step by step how they created, how they did their study, how they found, and they did an analysis of the actual service. They looked at internally all of the issues with pickups, and they did a overhead analysis of various different trucks and equipment requirements. So it's a very, and they have schedules that are attached to the study for people who want to know the actual in-depth information that they utilize. And that in-depth information is attached, so you can take a look at your leisure and figure out how they came up to these numbers. They then went, and again, if you start taking a look at page 23, they come up with their recommendations after identifying the expenses, identifying what the costs have to be, and separating them out. They come up with a revenue plan and a rate assessment schedule. And that basically shows up in the rate assessment schedule that is on page 23. And as you go down, you'll notice that the numbers that are here are what shows up, particularly in the two ordinances. And the two ordinances have, again, identical recommendations for solid waste collection per can, recycling, dumpster collection for those who get dumpster service, and then they have basic, and as you see here, street-based services or parcel-based services at the bottom. Those, again, are going to be based, and you'll hear about these in a second. Those are the ordinance-based that will be on a trip generation and on a square footage under roof basis for those two sets of services. The alternative service that they recommend is on a tax basis for the special services. And again, we'll go over them and how and what the basis for the calculation of the rate for that services is. But this basically, again, the rate study comes up with these conclusions. They give you some, again, discussions of average residential bills. But from the SCS's perspective, this is what is necessary if you are to cover the expenses of the department at 100% level. And again, as you look at the end of this, you'll see that they are scheduled, their model results, their assumptions, their trial balances, the cash, the pro formas, capital improvement plans, borrowing. So it's a very detailed list of the exhibits and the information that they used in order to calculate and come up with their rate recommendation. Again, it's a standard rate study. It goes through the standard steps. And these are the results for your consideration. Are there any questions, any specifics that you'd like me to go back over in more detail?
Colleagues, any questions?
I'm sorry, let me ask a question. If I'm looking at the solid waste cans, for $409.45 per can, are we saying that that's what you would charge a resident for solid waste, $120 for recycling? If I'm a resident, I'm not doing dumpsters, and so then street services would be $18.62. Parcel-based services would be $13.59. Is that what I'm looking at? And you add all that up, that comes to right between $500 and less than $600 or something like that for a resident per year.
That's accurate if you don't take special services as an ad valorem tax. So that's under the one alternative. Yes.
Okay, so this is not with the special services. It's not included in this. Okay.
It is. No, the special services are what the street-based services.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was $18.62. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry.
Those are the special.
Wait a minute. I'm confused. I'll stop and let you explain.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Again, going back to your page, looking at page 23, you see an assessment schedule here. For single family, the single family would pay the solid waste can the recycling, the street-based service, and the parcel-based service under one of the ordinance options. Under the other ordinance option, they would pay the solid waste can charge, the recycling charge, and an ad valorem tax based upon the assessed value and the discounted assessed value of the home. That's not shown on this particular.
So this one is just one particular. So you just talked about another one. Are you going to show us the other one so we can compare the two? Is that going to come up somewhere in the presentation?
That will come up in the presentation when we do the two ordinances.
Okay.
But if you look at the next page, 24, there's a chart on page 24 that shows you the average residential bill. And the first column is the current bill. The second column is the proposed bill with the special services fees that you saw above. And the last column is the proposed bill with a solid waste tax. Again, these are average, which means that a resident might have a bill that's significantly less than, at least on the proposed tax, solid waste tax side. Your bill will go up and down depending on the value of your home. But this is a basic comparison of what they will look like under the two for an average residential bill.
Okay. All right. So what you presented us is what's in front of us on page 24. If I was looking at page 23, that's option, the one that's in the middle, proposed bill special service fees.
Yes.
That's what we're looking at. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Archibald, may I ask a question?
Please.
Can you just, this is pretty basic, review again, there are two different charts in the study on the cost of services analysis. So the one, on what I'm looking at, it's a draft, I think it's page 5, but I think it was on yours, it's page 6. And then there's one that we get to down later on page 14 or 15. Can you just explain the difference in those two charts?
Let's take a peek. I believe they're the same chart.
They have different numbers. It's the same chart, but
one has a 79, 808, 804. The other one adds up to 79, 808, 804. They're the same chart.
No. The totals are the same, but the allocations are different.
Oh, okay. Let's see what she did there.
Unless the draft I'm looking at had an error. But I'm looking at, for example, recycling is only 13.5% in the first one, and then it's up at like 41% in the second one.
Councilmember I.
Yes. Do I not have the final?
I will have to defer that to Vita when we get a hold of her as to what and why there's a difference between those two.
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty significant differences in them. So that's something we got to figure out. Is Vita online now?
Yes, she has joined the call.
Okay.
She has? Yes, I'm here.
Vita, did you hear the question?
Yes, and I'm looking at that right now. They should be the same chart. So whatever happened, I'll tell you which one's right. The one on
You'll have to give me a minute. Excuse me. The one in the executive summary is correct.
So the one down in 3.2.3 is wrong?
Well, let me look at whether that was a different... You'll have to give me a moment. I need to open the actual models. Okay, I was just double checking because there is some, to some extent, there's some reallocation of certain costs that get apportioned into the rates. But no, the one in the executive summary is correct.
So the one up front on page
7.
Well, look, it's... Okay, so then when we're down in 3.2.3, those numbers are just wrong?
I don't honestly know where that came from. So it must have been copied from a prior version of that table. But no, that is not what's being used in the analysis. The recycling number doesn't make sense to me. And it's not what's reflected in the rate calculations.
Okay, so the rate calculations use the chart that has garbage collection at 26.3, recycling at 13.5, yard trimming at 8.9.
Are you talking percent?
Yes.
Okay, then yes.
Okay. Okay, well, wish we hadn't put this out as final into the public that has two inconsistent tables.
This is a draft report.
Right, but everybody said we were ready today to publicly discuss this. So if it just has a flat-out error of a cut-and-paste error in it, that's confusing to me and to the public.
Do you need me to resend it?
To the whole city of Atlanta who is interested in this. I mean, we're in a work session right now, so I guess anybody who's listening is following. I'm not really sure what to say on that, but if you are listening, look at the beginning chart, not the one in 3.2.3. Clearly, we weren't ready to make this presentation today. Ms. First, could you respond to that point, please?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Archibald, will you repeat that?
Ms. I was making the point that there is an error relative to the amounts reflected in the executive summary versus what's in 3.2.3. Different numbers are reflected. And the question was, should the consultant just resubmit something right now that can be pushed out? But this has been shared with the public. And so I'm thinking this is more not for the consultant to answer, but for the law department to respond to this conundrum right now.
Yes, and so my recommendation would be for the consultant to send us the updated rate study, and we will work with the council staff to get the correct one published on the site, and I think that's the best way for us to respond to that. So she can get it to us, and we will get it to Ms. Kimson Wright and team, and they can put the correct one on the City Utilities Committee's page.
And certainly make sure that there are no other errors that maybe you haven't even seen yet. Okay. Ms. Ide, anything else?
Well, I have lots of other thoughts on where we are right now, but at least I know which chart is the right one.
Okay. Well, thank you for that out. Does that conclude your questions?
For right now, it does. Yep.
Okay. I've got a cue. Mr. Hillis and then Ms. Overstreet. Here's somebody else. Mr. Hillis.
Can I follow up page 6 in case you're looking at it as the correct proposal at this point? Page 6 and not the other page.
You want to get clarity?
Yeah, I just want to get clarification.
So what's going to happen now to clarify the situation? Substitute pages, or what's the next step? Page 5 will be substituted, or is that the correct one?
We will send a new report around that will have the correct charts, and as Councilmember Ide indicated, to ensure that it is the balance of the report is error-free. So Mrs. Quinn will work on that. That will not likely happen during this work session because I'd like to give her an opportunity to relook at everything, but we would have that ready to distribute as soon as she takes a second look at the report.
All right, Ms. Shepherd, does that clarify it for you?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Mr. Hillis and then Ms. Overstreet.
Thank you, Chairwoman Archibald. First, I have another chart question and then more of a philosophical question. So the first question is looking at page 6, when we're looking at the special services fee versus the solid waste tax. Why are we charging totally different numbers with a difference of $60 for the same services for the fee versus the tax? We're looking at $561.84 versus $620.73.
A fee is based on the cost to provide services. The tax is based on the value of your home. So if you see the footnote there, it tells you it assumes an average home value of $332,000. The assessor assesses that at 40% of the home's value, and that's the calculation of that tax for the special services fee, whereas the special services cost of service that's apportioned to an average residential home would be $32.20.
Okay, well, $332,000 is the average. Then why don't we just reduce the millage rate to bring it more in line with what the special services fee says that we should be charging?
Because then you would be under collecting for your total revenue requirement. The millage is based on the total amount that you need to recover for your special services. And so it's about $20 million. And we provided that to finance, who were able to calculate the millage, because there are parcels that have exemptions, but what it would take to be able to recover that amount in total. How that is apportioned is now different, because in the special services fee, we're doing it on the trip generation, on a parcel basis, looking at the benefits received or the cost to provide services, specifically the different parcels. Whereas the tax is strictly based on the value of a property.
Okay. Well, that brings me to the overarching question. I'm not really sure who this is for, whether it's for you or law department or Mr. Wiggins if he's on, or I don't know, the incoming mayor, whatever. I just don't understand why that the city charges a special fee, or we're looking at charging a special tax to provide common good services like street sweeping, sign removal, dead animal collection, road mowing, lot clearing, illegal dumping, the sweep team, keep Atlanta beautiful, community cleanups. I mean, those are common good services that, in my opinion, and many others, and the opinions of many other cities, given their practices, that those should be charged from the general fund. Those are common good services that not just residents of the city or businesses of the city benefit from. I mean, I can see charging a solid waste fee if you physically have collection happening at your residence or business. So I would like to see some kind of proposal written up where we consider that. So what would that take?
That is the tax. That is the ad valorem alternative.
I'm not talking about charging the ad valorem tax. I'm talking about just putting it into the general fund.
Okay.
I'm not calling it a solid waste tax.
It would be the same amount of millage, but it would be, it wouldn't be a dedicated tax in that case.
It wouldn't be the same amount of millage, at least not on the collection side, because more than just property taxes going to funding the general fund.
No, the same amount of increase. So that point, is it 0.68 mils, would be the same, because all you're doing is calculating the amount of millage it would take to recover that amount to pay for special services. Whether you do that in a dedicated tax or as part of the general fund tax, it would be the same amount.
Right, but I'm talking on the collection side. The general fund is funded by a lot more than just a property tax, which is what this is. The general fund is funded by property taxes, sales taxes, etc. So while the solid waste department would get the equal amount of money out of the general fund, the people paying it, who are affected by this, would see less of a property tax increase, because some of that money would also be coming from other funding sources.
Yes, to the extent that the general fund had additional monies that it could use to offset that need for additional millage, it would lower the amount of that increase.
All right. So I would like to see a proposal that considers that.
We would need to do a general fund financial sustainability analysis of some kind to know what funds are available in the general fund to be able to pay for that.
Okay, well, we do that every year when we consider the budget. So, and we've already collected solid waste fees for this year. So that's something I think this council needs to consider when we look at the FY 23.
All right, Mr. Hillis, thank you for that. Do you have anything else?
I think he stopped mid-sentence. We lost him.
Okay, well, he'll maybe log back in. I see Council President Moore has joined us and has a comment, but we do have a queue, so if Mr. Hillis comes back, we'll let him in, but Ms. Overstreet and then Council President Moore.
Okay, so we almost answered my question, but I want to back up just a little bit about the questions with the wrong numbers. It sounded from the law department as if the numbers that you all are looking at are not the same as what's displayed. So is it just a matter of how we could get that shown on the presentation now? What you see and the correct numbers are? Is it that simple? Because I would really like to go ahead on and tidy all of this up, because now my next question is I need a timeline. How does this affect
our legislation that we're considering. And, you know, I just need a timeline as to if those numbers are completely different from what we view today and don't have the option of just showing what you have privy to that's different from what we saw today. What does that do with our timeline? Do we have another work session? Because we still want it to be all displayed for the public correctly. So just want to understand that better. If we could go back a little bit and touch on that. Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Overstreet. This is Alicia Frazier. So we all have the same report. It's just a matter of taking the one chart out that is incorrect. And so for ease of purposes, and also to council members, I comment, we wanted to give the consultant, Ms. Quinn, an opportunity to look at the report to make sure that all the charts and the numbers align. But you're not looking at anything different. It's just a matter of removing the one chart, as we know right now, removing the one chart that is not correct. Mrs. Quinn, is that a fair representation?
Yeah, it's just copying that chart to the place where the other chart is.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that we're clear to the public as to, you know, the numbers. And we said several times on the call that those were not the correct numbers. So if we have them and this whole this whole presentation is still based on the correct numbers, I just want to make sure everyone is on that page.
Yes, and then so everyone, including what's posted on the committee's website, they have the correct charts in there in the rate study. The problem is there's also an incorrect chart. And Phil, if you or Vita can tell the page number of the incorrect chart, people can just disregard that. But we will reissue the rate study with that incorrect chart substituted for the correct one. But we do have the correct chart in the rate study. So Phil or Vita, if you could just kind of walk people through.
Thank you.
So on page 16 of the PDF, or it's labeled in there page 14, that is the table that needs to be replaced. That is the one to disregard. The rates and the calculations that were done to create the rates were based on the cost of services as presented in the table on page 7 of the PDF or page 5 of the document.
Ms. I, did you want to add anything?
I can wait my turn in line. I had a follow-up to Mr. Hillis, but if there are other people in line, I can wait.
Okay, I thought you were responding to Marcy.
Yeah, I thought I think that question got answered on.
Okay. Thank you. I'm fine with it now, and those are my questions. Thank you. I yield the floor.
All right, thank you. I think Ms. Moore, and then Ms. Shepherd, and then Ms. I. So, Council President Moore.
Yes, I was wondering, was Mr. Hillis did he get back on the line?
Oh.
Yes, I'm on. I was never off. I just must have had some bad reception or something, but I'm here.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of give a little bit more context. I get where you're going about the rate, but, you know, I believe what she's trying to say, and as I understand it, the general fund is made up of a whole lot of different revenue sources that make up the money that we spend for anything in the general fund, but the addition of this cost to the general fund's got to be made up somewhere. And that would, I believe that's why she's calling it ad valorem, because the only way to and they can correct me if I'm wrong, the only way to cover it, unless you come up with some other cuts somewhere in the budget, are going to be through increasing the property tax millage rate to cover that cost.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. I'm just saying that, if that time comes and we need to do a millage rate increase for other reasons, I'd much rather do one millage rate increase than say, hey, we've got to increase your millage rate, and also, we've also got to increase your solid waste fees, like we've already done a few years ago.
That's a valid point. But I just think we need to. I think your question was good because I think we need to be clear with the public, what's really under consideration.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that point. Now, Ms. Shepherd, you want to ask a question now about the pages, or go ahead with your question?
So when he was talking about what pages we look at, can we talk about the pages and what's the topic? The title is that cost to provide services. When you talk about the different pages, I'm confused. I'm sorry. Can you go back over that one more time, please? So I'll make sure I'm looking at the right chart. Who was giving that information?
Yes, it was the cost to provide services table. Disregard the ones on that appears later. Look at the one in the executive summary. That's all it is. It's just a table that was pasted incorrectly in that place.
Stop. When you say executive summary, what page is that on? Is that on page 14?
That's the one that's on page 7 of the PDF and page 5 of the document. That is the table that is correct.
So page 5 of the document is the correct number. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I should look at the other one. Okay, that's what I need to know. Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. I, did you have something else?
Sure. So just sort of following up on my question at the very beginning of the session of, the line items that we use to include in the cost to provide services, and Mr. Hillis's question. That's an assumption that was in there, and this is a question for law. My understanding is that there are certain items that the state allows us to charge for separately outside of just our ad valorem tax, and is that how we got this original list of services that were going to be included in our billing and in this analysis, is because those are the categories that the state allows us to. Now, as a policy matter, we could decide no to absorb those into our general fund cost, but if somebody could clarify on that of sort of how we got this list to begin with.
There is no set list of services. It varies by the municipality. So the rate-making process is interactive with the staff. So
I'm sorry, can I stop you for 1 second? Can I ask the law department? I want to understand what the state law is on what we're allowed to charge for separately, because we can't just do this on any old thing of charge a separate fee. So I sort of want to go back historically of how the city of Atlanta decided that lot clearing or grass mowing should go into our solid waste.
Mrs. Grant, do you have a response for that?
Historically, I'm sorry, this is Stephanie Grant, City of Atlanta Law Department. Historically, the city decided via council ordinance what we were going to charge for and how we were going to charge it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, back in the 80s, the city adopted the current structure of utilizing solid waste funds as an enterprise fund, and then there was also the decision historically to charge certain fees. Certain of these fees were made up by what is an uncommon practice called the front footage fee, And so when the changes were made in 2018, the council at the time and the administration at the time decided to move away from front footage fee and to provide, attempt to charge costs associated with the services provided. But the direct answer to your question about the state law is not very, state law doesn't have any particular guidance as to what you can charge for. It's just that if you do provide a service and charge a cost for it, that the cost has to be related to the service that is provided. And if it's not related to the service that's provided and you do charge a tax, then you do have to, have that authority conferred upon yourself, which we do in the city's charter. Ms. I, can you let me know if that's responsive to your question, or if you need me to?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think, for my colleagues, this is really a policy decision. And for us, in the two papers that I read in, just to give a little background to the people that may be listening, there has been litigation over our current rates, and we all know that we are going to need to pass some new legislation on a go-forward basis to everybody feel comfortable that we have legally defensible solid waste fees. And so we did these two, I did these two papers working with the law department of the two different approaches, but it did use these same categories that we've been using in the past. And that's an issue that the two pieces of legislation that I put in currently didn't go back and question, were these the right categories to put in there? And I'm certainly open to a discussion if we get it done this year or if the new council does it next year of whether some of these should be absorbed into the general fund. But just to make it clear for everybody, that's not something that we looked at in these two papers of whether we should pull out some of these items, line items that have historically been treated as specific solid waste related expenses and absorb them. Otherwise, just sort of timing-wise, I know this is a big lift at the end of the year, and we have a specially called meeting on the 20th. If it doesn't happen before the end of this year, the legislation would have to start over. My only ask, and I won't be here, is that it please happen early enough next year to assist in the budget setting for the fiscal year 23 budget. Otherwise, we're going to continue with the financial problem of not necessarily covering the cost or figuring out how to cover the cost. So, Mr. Hillis, that's sort of my response to. I share your concerns about whether all of these should be allocated as solid. I mean, I think it is legally appropriate to, but whether it's a policy decision, that's something that we want to do or not. I'm open to having that discussion.
And Ms. Ahmed, if I'm not stepping out of turn here, I think this is Stephanie Grant. I said if I'm not stepping out of turn here, I think we would echo the sentiments of if it is not, it is a policy decision, and that it would be better to make the decision sooner rather than later. If it is going to be transferred to next year for a different consideration, because we have to remember that we continue to have exposure while we're on the books with the current rate structure.
Okay.
All right, anybody else in the queue? A lot to take in. All right, our colleagues, any other questions?
Hi, this is Councilmember Hillis. I do have one somewhat related question.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's for the law department. Where are we with the establishing and setting up the process for the refunds for the settlement?
If so, I could please defer to Ms. Frazier or Ms. Roach about the status of the settlement.
This is Alicia Frazier. So the parties, well, actually, let me step back and let Mrs. Roach or Mr. Gilder respond to that.
Hi, this is Philip Gilden again. The process currently, the court has entered into new order approving settlement, and it's in a appeal period time frame. As soon as that appeal period time frame ends, then the final order will be entered, at which point then the refund process can begin. So it's moving very quickly, and as quickly as it can. We're pretty far along in having it implemented.
Okay, thanks for that update.
Is there anything else that we need to consider or discuss prior to the special call meeting on the 20th as we decide what to do or maybe what not to do? Councilmember Archibald, this is Alicia Frazier. Mrs. Jane and Grant are going to do a walkthrough of the two pieces of legislation. Is that something that you still want to happen so that, for the public purpose and for you and your colleagues, we can walk through the differences between the two? That's fine with me. Colleagues, any objection to that? Send me a text if you have an objection. If I don't see anything, we'll proceed. Thumbs down would be good. That's quick. All right, I'm not seeing any objections. Please follow that course. All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Grant and Ms. Jane, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. This is Stephanie Grant again. I'm going to allow Ms. Kit Jane to go first. She's going to discuss the 21-0873, which is the trip generation method. As Ms. Ide told you previously, there are two proposed changes to Chapter 130 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances. One is the methodology that follows the trip generation proposal as contemplated by the rate study, and the second is the ad valorem version, which is 21-0-0876. And I'm going to let Ms. Jane go first and introduce herself and walk you all through 21-0-0873. Thanks.
And we've got a hard stop at 10:30, so hopefully we can get this done 10 minutes each or something. But thank you.
Is Ms. Jane muted? Has she been unmuted?
Hi, I think I should be unmuted now.
You are.
Thank you so much. This is Kit Jane, as Stephanie introduced me. I'm an attorney on her team and will be providing a summary of both ordinances and the changes they proposed to Chapter 130 of the Code. So as just a general overview, I know that Phil has gone through some of these matters, so hopefully this won't be too redundant. But speaking of the ordinances more directly, their changes can be divided into three general categories: cleanup changes to the code, changes in the cost structure and cost amount for services, and the formalizing of a new administrative hearing procedure. The cleanup changes and formalization of the new administrative hearing procedure are identical in both ordinances, and as we've discussed, they differ in the manner and amount for which street-based sanitary services and common good sanitary services are charged, one using the trip generation methodology and the other the ad valorem methodology. And just as a note, both ordinances would become effective immediately, but applied to bills for 2022. So both the trip generation and ad valorem versions include the same charges for solid waste collection and disposal. This we saw in the rate study, and includes a charge of $409.45 per year for residential properties, and the Section 130.77B3 senior discount would apply to that. There's also a solid waste collection and disposal charge of $9,085.20 per year per dumpster for all other properties where garbage is collected by the city twice a week, and a charge of $22,713.01 per year per dumpster where garbage is collected by the city 5 times per week, and a $1,053.92 charge for residential backyard removal services. Both ordinances also propose a solid waste recycling fee of $120.18 per year for single-family residences, and a residential backyard recycling removal service fee of $309.20. And another senior discount would be applicable to the solid waste recycling fee for those. And both ordinances also have fortification and special event cleanups now assessed through permit fees that will be established by the city. In terms of trip generation, this ordinance established 2 assessments, as Bill mentioned. One is for street-based sanitary services and one is for common good sanitary services. And both of these assessments include a fixed assessment for single or multifamily residents with their dwelling units, and then an assessment for all other properties, excuse me, that varies in amount based on how that other property compares to an average residential property. Goodness. So in terms of street-based sanitary services, that assessment goes towards street sweeping, right-of-way mowing, illegal sign removal, trash receptacle collection, and dead animal collection. And that assessment is $18.62 per single-family residence or $10 per multi-family residence. And then for all other properties, you look to the land use code associated with that parcel, and that land use code is in turn associated with a specific number of equivalent residential trip generation units, and that refers to the approximate number of trips applicable to a residential property. So a point of comparison is the number of trips generated by a given parcel. And then each other property is charged $18.62, the single-family residential amount per unit associated with that land use code. And there's a minimum of one of those charges per other property. Then for common good sanitary services, which include sweep, keep Atlanta beautiful, community cleanup, illegal dumping, and lot clearing, there's an assessment of $13.59 per year for each single or multifamily dwelling unit. And then for all other properties, we're comparing them to residential properties based on their under-roof square footage. So the average under-roof square footage of a residence is 1,594 square feet, which we're defining as an equivalent residential square footage unit, or ERU. And then all other properties are assessed $13.59, the residential amount, for each ERU for that property's under-roof square footage. And again, there's a minimum of 1 ERU charged or assessed per property. And then Stephanie, I think, was going to mention the ad valorem charge, if she's available.
Yes, thank you, Kit. And so, Chairman Archibald and members of the committee, 210-0876 is the ordinance that proposes the solid waste service fees and assessments using an ad valorem basis. And as Ms. Jane has already said, that the solid waste collection and disposal is the same for both ordinances. There is a residential component of $409.45 per year with a senior discount applicable. There is also the residential backyard removal service of $1,053.92 per year, and then all other properties that have the that are collected with dumpsters has the charges that appear in the ordinance. $9,085.20 per year per dumpster collected. If it's twice a week, and $22,713.01 per year per dumpster collected 5 times a week. It also has a component for recycling fees. Again, that matches the trip generation version, $120.18 for residential recycling, and $309.20 for residential backyard recycling removal. And then the difference, and the major difference between trip generation and ad valorem, is that the street-based and common goods sanitary services that we've talked about for a good bit this morning, including street sweeping, right-of-way mowing, trash receptacles, sweet, keep Atlanta beautiful, community cleanups, and etc., would be charged a 68.6 cents per $1,000 of taxable assessed value of each parcel, and that's after all the exemptions. So at a quick and high level overview, that is the difference between the two ordinances, trip generation and ad valorem. And as Ms. Ide has stated, she introduced both for our consideration, and it is at this point a policy decision for council to make a recommendation to move forward on one of the versions that is before you.
What about incorporating into an option what Councilmember Hillis suggested? Do you have enough time for that?
We can certainly consider that. I think we are as you all have your chat, we have our chat, and we are saying that we do need to discuss it as a team after this meeting, and we certainly will do that. I'm trying to think through any procedural requirements, but it is quite possible that we could introduce a substitute that would consider the proposal that Councilmember Hill has made. We will certainly consider it, take a look and see if it's available for option for us procedurally.
Given the fact that this is a call meeting, the procedures might be slightly different. Is that what you're saying?
That, as well as, if we considered it a completely different third option and a third ordinance, I don't believe that procedurally we could introduce it at this point, since there are no more council meetings. I believe that the code requires ordinances to be quote unquote read at a regular meeting. And so we've met that regular meeting requirement for both versions before us, but it is quite possible procedurally that we can look into substituting one of the versions.
Yeah, and I would also add that I don't think that we have the time, because I think that the consultant would have to generate additional data, which, that would, take us off of any time frame of being able to substitute. Even if we had the time to do that, I don't think she would have the data in time. But as Ms. Grant said, we will talk offline, and we will advise the council once we get a chance to discuss it.
So let me ask a question. I do think as policymakers, we do want to have, a rich array of options that best address the issue and are respectful of our constituents across the city. If on the 20th an option is selected, we can revisit that. How frequently? Is this a 3-year commitment? Can we do it annually? How often can the council, the new council, review these rates and how we approach this?
If I recall the statute correctly, and perhaps Ms. Grant Ms. Jane are better respondents to this question, but I think you can do it on an annual basis. Is that correct, Mrs. Pratt? Not that you would do it, but go ahead.
I think the code provides for a report on an annual basis of the costs associated with the provision of services, but you can certainly undertake a rate study at any time that you are you're able, and of course, the council can also revisit the code at any time that it desires. But let me look up the code really quickly. I don't. What I should say, Councilmember Archibald, is that I don't believe there's any prohibition to looking at it any frequently.
Okay, I just wanted that to be out there so we can understand the options. If we do something now, knowing that we can revisit it is important.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, unless you find something different, that satisfies me. Colleagues, any other questions? We have about 3 minutes. We have a hard stop at 10:25 to give our staff enough time to set up for the special call council meeting. Any other questions? I'm looking at my phone for anyone with questions. All right. Well, we don't have any other questions, so thank you. We look forward to receiving the supplemental information that was said would be shared with all the council as possible. Anything else from the law department, consultants, colleagues, staff?
Nothing from the law department.
Okay. All right. Well, I will then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who is that, Mr. Bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Always right on time. I'll say that if there are no objections, we stand adjourned. Please phone back in for the special call council meeting at 10:30. Thank you.